Hello. I've got a story for you called The Fisherman's Wishes. There was once a young couple who had a string of disasters. First she lost her job and he lost his. They were running out of money and they needed to find something to do. Then an amazing opportunity came up. They had the chance to buy a tiny cottage on the edge of a tiny island in the far north of Scotland. "I could grow vegetables in the back garden," she said, "and you could go out and catch fish." "Sounds good to me," he said. So they packed up everything they owned and travelled far north to get to the island and begin their new life together. When they got there, things were not quite as good as they thought they would be. Oh, it went well to start off with. She got loads of seeds and planted them in the ground. He got his boat and his nets ready. It looked like they were going to have a good time. But the trouble was, nothing seemed to grow. She planted the seeds. Nothing happened. And as for him, it turned out he couldn't catch a cold, let alone catch a fish. "How about we swap over?" she said to him. "I'll go out fishing, and you can dig the garden." "Sounds good to me," he said. So they gave it a try. On her first day, she rowed out in the little boat into the ocean, into the Atlantic. She lowered her net into the water and waited, and waited and waited, and eventually she lifted it out again. There was nothing there. So she tried the other side, lowering the net into the water, waiting and waiting, and then pulling it out. And this time, there was just one fish. One tiny little fish. This was not going to work. She said, "Oh well, never mind, little fish. At least I can cook you for my tea and have you on a bit of toast." The fish looked up at her and said, Cook me for your tea? Not likely. I'm not going to be eaten by anybody for tea, breakfast or dinner." "You're a talking fish," she said. "Of course I'm a talking fish," he said. "I'm a magic fish. What else would I do? And I'll grant you a wish if you like." "A wish," she said. "Gosh, this could really change our lives." So she rowed back to shore to take the fish to her husband to see if they could agree what wish to make. Well, they thought long and hard. They thought about wishing for money. They thought about wishing for lots more wishes, but that apparently wasn't allowed. In the end, they decided what they really needed was a better house. And from there, they could start to rebuild their lives much better. So that's what they wished for. "Are you sure?" said the fish. "Yes, and please could we have a pond in the garden as well?" "Okay," said the fish, "but don't forget you've got to put me back in the water afterwards." "Oh, we won't forget," they said. He waved his magic fin, and their little house was transformed into a 10-bedroomed mansion. There were sitting rooms, 2 kitchens, guest rooms, the main bedroom with a 4-poster bed. It was wonderful. They were so excited. They almost forgot about the fish, but then they remembered that it was still sitting there on the kitchen table. They looked out, and there, sure enough, was a pond. "Why don't we put him in the pond? And if we ever need another wish, we'll just get him out again," said the husband. "Good idea," said the wife. So they did. They left him in the pond, swimming around, feeling very sorry for himself. Well, it's great having a 10-bedroom mansion. There's so much fun you can have exploring all the nooks and crannies, and the garden too, but you can't go on forever doing that. It gets a bit boring after a while. In the end, they started to think, we should have wished for a bit more than this. How about a much bigger garden with lots of fields so we can plant lots of different crops and feed ourselves? They went to the pond and fished out the fish. "Could we have another wish, please?" "Oh, all right then, but you've got to put me back again into the sea this time. Don't leave me in that pond. It's not even salty." "Oh, we will," they said. The fish waved his magic fin, and the garden was extended as far as they could see, with fields full of waving corn and growing vegetables of all different kinds. It was just what they'd imagined and hoped for when they'd started this new life. Wonderful, they said. They went out and explored. They started to harvest those crops that were ready and to tend to those that needed more care before they would too be ready to eat. They were enjoying themselves so much. This was the life. They completely forgot about the fish. After a while, though, they got a bit bored. It felt like hard work. They felt like they needed a bit more. So they said, let's go and ask the fish if we can have the whole island to ourselves, and everybody on it could be our servants and do the work for us. Sounds good to me. So they went to see the fish. They fished him out of his pond. He said, what do you want now? You promised to put me back in the sea. Oh, we will, they said, just as soon as you grant our next wish. And they told him what they wanted. Very well, said the fish, but don't forget me this time. Well, he waved his magic fin, and their whole land was extended to the extremes of the island. Everywhere they looked now belonged to them, and all the people who'd been living there, living their own lives, now became their servants. They tended to the fields, and they looked after the husband and the wife too. They cooked for them, they cleaned for them, they did everything for them. All they had to do was sit back and enjoy life. But it just wasn't enough. They were bored. They wanted more. They decided to go and see the fish. Fish, we know what we want this time. We want to be the king and queen of the whole of Scotland. The whole of Scotland, said the fish. That's ridiculous. Well, if you make us that, we will put you back in the water. Oh, very well, said the fish, and he waved his magic fin. Straight away, crowns appeared on their heads, and made great gowns. And as they looked around themselves, they could see that their house had become a palace. Their servants, too, had liveries like posh servants do. They took a little trip in the boat and found that when they landed on the mainland, people there, too, saw them as their king and their queen. They travelled the length and breadth of Scotland. Everywhere they went, people cheered and waved Scottish flags, and they were delighted. But only for a while. After a while, it still got just a little bit boring being the king and queen of Scotland. They said, we need to be the king and queen of the whole of Europe. Let's go back to the island and ask the fish. They picked the fish out of the pond when they got home, and he said, what now? You're already king and queen of a whole country. Well, they said, we'd like to be king and queen of the whole of Europe. The whole of Europe? Do you speak all those languages? Well, you could make that part of the wish that we do. Very well, said the fish, but you must put me back at the end. We will, they said. They didn't. After a while, as they'd explored Europe and spoken to all their subjects in the many different languages they now could speak, they decided they were bored. They wanted more. They wanted the whole world. They told the fish when they got back to the island. Really, this is getting ridiculous, said the fish. Very well, but you must put me back in the sea. He waved his magic fin. New crowns appeared in their cabinets inside the house. They found they were the kings and queens of the whole of the world. They travelled the world, going from north to south, east to west, and everywhere they went, they found people cheering and waving at them, and giving them gifts, and looking after them, and caring for them. It was wonderful. That is until it got boring. They went back to the island to see if they could refine themselves. But they were bored there as much as anywhere. So in the end, they turned to the fish. And they said, the world is not enough. We want the moon and the stars. Well, it was night time by the time they'd made this wish. And the fish sighed and looked up at the moon and the stars, and he said, will you put me back this time? And they said, oh yes, we will. So he waved a magic fin, and as they looked up into the night sky, the moon and the stars bowed down to them, raised themselves back up to show that even they were subject to the husband and wife's rule. But this was still not enough. Are you surprised? I don't think you are you? They looked at each other. There's nothing more we can ask for. We're so bored. They went back to the fish and they said, "We'll put you back in the sea this time, if you find something that will make us happy for good." The fish said, "Are you absolutely sure?" They said, "Yes." "Will you put me back in the sea?" "Oh yes," they said, "absolutely." So the fish waved his magic fin, and as he did so, all the crowns disappeared. The moon and the stars went back to their original places. Their fields, their garden, everything changed. Their house was down to the tiny little cottage they'd first bought all those months ago. They looked at each other and they realized they'd lost everything they'd wished for before, but they'd gained something too. They'd understood that in this place, as it was to start with, they could make a life that was happy. From then on, they worked hard. He dug the garden, she caught the fish, and this time their wish was granted. They found happiness in each other, in hard work, and in the joy of being content. The end.